Let's get straight to the point with views from both sides of the aisle. We now welcome Austin Barber and Brandon Jones to our MPB studios. Austin is a Republican strategist and founder of the Clearwater Group. Brandon is an attorney and a former Democratic member of the Mississippi House of Representatives. Gentlemen, welcome back to Ad Issue.
Good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
So we're gonna continue to beat the Medicaid expansion drum. First, a kind of leaked copy of the Senate's plan. The Senate advanced a dummy bill out of committee. They didn't even take it up on the floor. And now word is they're going to get the House bill that's sitting in committee with Kevin Blackwell right now, Senator Kevin Blackwell, and they have plans for a strike all amendment that includes what they're kind of maybe calling an expansion light. It is not the full expansion. It doesn't go up to the 38% of the federal poverty level. It looks like it's only going to be able to cover individuals that make $15,000, a little over $15,000, or a family of four that makes $31,000. That's not the same threshold. It's not going to cover as many people. So I'm guessing first, as a lawmaker, Brandon, former lawmaker, what's the calculus here for the Senate? Is it? I mean, it feels like we're going to give you something, but we're going to make sure it's not, Affordable Care Act expansion.
Austin, I'm running out of ways to talk about this to an extent because it's a little inexplicable to me. I mean, the Senate has had more than enough time to figure out what it wants to do. The lieutenant governor has had more than enough time to figure out what it is he wants to do. It seems like a woeful lack of leadership on his part that at this late stage of the debate, and I'm not just talking about the session. We get all up in arms about the session. Well, guys, it's only March, it's only this or that. This debate has been going on for a decade nationwide. Delbert Hosemann has probably attended 100 hours of continuing legislative education in forums on this thing, not to mention seeing every plan from 40 states across the country. So this notion that somehow our senators are scrambling to understand an issue that's been generating in American life for over a decade is not legitimate, first of all. That's just not true. And then the notion that we don't know, we have this Sphinx-like character in a lieutenant governor who can't get his people together on something, that's suspicious unless Governor Reeves has outflanked him so severely that he does not have the votes, he can't get the votes for anything, and we're just watching this long, protracted death of a situation where the Senate's just not going to pass expansion.
Oh, you heard all that? I'm just going to let you take that.
I don't know. I don't know if he was really directing any of that towards me.
No, not
necessarily.
But I don't think you asked me a specific question either there.
Well, even if he didn't ask you a question, do you take issue with any of the points he made? Do you?
I mean, listen, I think the reality of the Medicaid expansion debate and conversation, I don't necessarily agree with everything Brandon says. I mean, not every member of the state Senate or the state House does have a full understanding of Medicaid expansion. Will they have a much better, no, I shouldn't say Medicaid expansion, the Medicaid program, what is the federal poverty level? What does that really mean? What's that number? How does this impact people that are on that? Certainly they are getting more educated on that because nobody thought this issue was going to come. It didn't come up last year. It didn't come up the year before because there wasn't much of a desire to do it. But that obviously has changed. And Jason White made this a big priority and pushed it out fast. And then the Senate's trying to figure out how do they want to handle this. So I don't think it's fair. Yes, maybe the lieutenant governor, the speaker, and so forth. They have a full understanding of this. But every member of the legislature, no, and they're the ones who have to actually go vote on this. And so they probably are taking their time to go, if you're a member of the Senate, okay, what was it that the House passed? Okay, up to 138%. And it's not necessarily 100% tied to a work requirement.
I just wanted to ask you, though, you would include in that orbit of understanding, though, the committee chair. So, for example, Senator Blackwell certainly should know the program by now.
And that 138% numbers I pulled out of thin air.
No, I get it. I'm just walking you through sort of where I think things really are. And now you made me lose my train of thought,
I'm
Brandon.
sorry.
No, that's okay. Anyway, essentially that they have to sort of go through this process. What is the House plan? How is it different? I'm talking about senators. How am I involved with this? Where do I need to be on this? I hear from the governor's office. I hear from constituents back home. I hear from hospitals. I hear from business leaders. What does this all really mean? I guess I'm surprised that we hadn't seen a Senate plan by now. Certainly you just read about a leaked copy of a Senate plan. There's been rumors at the Capitol about, where things are. But I'm rambling here, but I have thoughts on this. Most bills over there, and you've sat on conference committees, the House says we're going to do this and the Senate says we're going to do this, and maybe we meet in the middle.
Right.
We want to spend $1, we want to spend $2, we spend $1.50. I'm not sure there's a middle ground on this.
And that was what I'm worried. I mean,
I don't think there is. I think there's either the alleged Senate plan, which is we're going to go up to 100%, and the folks that are at the 100 to 100 or above 100%, they're going to continue to get their coverage via the exchange. We're going to require, we're going to tie the work requirement in. Tie this extra benefit in, additional benefits into the work requirement being approved. I don't think there's because the other side is like, we're going to go to 138%. Okay, that is what the definition of Medicaid expansion is.
Right. The
FMAP, which is the rate that Mississippi would get reimbursed by the feds, is tied to that. So it's not like you can go, we're going to go to 127.5%. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but that's sort of the way that I understand it. It's either you're going to do one or the other.
Yeah. I mean, is this reluctance to meet the 138% and get full expansion? I mean, considering all of the groups backing this, and I'm going to come back to it for the question on that. I mean, is this the reluctance to get to 138% is essentially a political ploy to say we are not going to expand Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act? Instead, we're going to offer more Medicaid coverage to Mississippians. Is this why this is more palatable? Because maybe some lawmakers can go and say this isn't a expansion of Obamacare.
Well, what we think we know, and we don't know. I mean, what we think we know about the Senate plan, at least what's been reported, is not 100%, but 99% of the federal poverty rate. At least that's what they said on the sheet of paper.
Right.
And then a 12-month waiting period for anyone who leaves their plan to come to this plan.
Right.
120-hour work requirement. So it's not just a work requirement. It's like it's a pretty onerous
30 hours a week.
And then you go to if the DHS were to reject any portion of it, it wouldn't go into effect. So we need to be really clear. Austin makes a point. A lot of people don't know a lot about Medicaid. Some people don't know all the contours of Medicaid expansion. Speaking as someone who's been studying this stuff from a policy perspective for a long time, let's be very clear about what this plan would represent in the landscape of other plans. This is not serious. This is not a Medicaid expansion plan. There's none of the 40 states that have done any of this stuff that would look at this plan as a serious plan. Mm-hmm. What we've heard about what the Senate wants to do would not be palatable for a host of reasons, but it's really like, why expend all of this political capital and put yourself through any of this, including a governor who's got a bee in his bonnet, for this plan? This is a joke. And so if this is and again, we don't know the plan because we don't have the bill yet, but like the bullet points are not going to be palatable because it's not going to do anything to move the dial in terms of building the workforce. And now the lieutenant governor has said that he wanted to use this as a tool to create a healthy workforce. Right. But if you don't expand the number to an appreciable level that includes 100,000 people or 200,000 people, then you're by definition not doing what you said you wanted to do. And we have a state economist who said, well, if they do this, if they don't go up to 138, they're just not moving the dial. It's just not changing the landscape. And so why put yourself through all of this for a plan that's just such a whisper of an idea?
I will say that the word that I hear is, it would add 70 or 80,000 people would get additional coverage. That's not nothing. Okay, you may want 200,000 people, but people may disagree with you, Brandon. They may, obviously some of these legislators, and you said political ploy, and I didn't think that was fair. I don't know that you meant it that way. That's how you led the question.
I just put political messaging.
Yeah,
I mean, because words matter to a lot of people.
I understand.
To give them the benefit of being able to say they didn't expand health. Like, we didn't expand health. Like, we didn't do the thing. We did our own thing.
Yeah, but
exactly.
And you guys got to remember, there are people with conservative beliefs who feel like, I don't want to expand government. That doesn't mean that they're a bad person because they say that. That doesn't mean that they're necessarily wrong and you're necessarily right. That's just their belief. I do not think that everybody who is right now going, I'm a no on this, I'm a no on the House plan, I'm a no on the Senate plan, that they're doing it for politics. But I think there are a lot more people Republicans who are open to this, what is alluded to as sort of the Senate plan right now. And I don't think it's nothing.
There's a huge economic reality to this.
I don't think it's nothing. And I think there's also rumors that I hear that the state could find a way for the folks that are from the 100 to 120% level who are on the exchange right now, who are buying private insurance off the exchange, that there could be a way that we could use state and federal dollars to help pay for some large portion of their premium. That's a good thing.
Well, in Arkansas, they did that.
Okay.
In this plan, they don't have it.
I'm just saying, this is just stuff that I hear.
Right. See that? Do you see
I
the
know.
problem?
I don't like that.
That's
I'm
silly.
with you.
That's silly. We're in late March, and then look, there are lives at stake here, and this notion of fiscal conservatism, and we don't like to grow. Look, Republicans grow whatever part of the government they want to that week, and then they use that excuse when they don't want to get on board with the program.
But Brandon,
this is health care.
But Brandon, if it would be very unfair for me to go, I think you're just wrong because of what your fundamental beliefs are.
Yeah.
That's
look, I appreciate the debate. I mean, you always, the great thing about this conversation is I'm always right. Well, you're always willing to stretch to the point of getting into these things, frankly, in a way that goes beyond sometimes what's happening over there at the Capitol. And that's great for the conversation. I mean, no, but you're willing to engage.
Look,
if we need Kevin Blackwell in this room to say, what on earth are you up to, buddy? Because this is a poor excuse for Senate.
But Kevin Blackwell has spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort on this issue.
We have to say something. There's a real huge piece we're leaving out of this. If you don't go over, so the 100% number that we're using, the federal poverty level, which by the way is $15,000.
It's $31,000 for a family of four. Not a lot of money.
$15,000 for one person.
Exactly. I know, it's not a lot of money.
138 is $20,000. So think about it as an individual. We're talking about a $5,000 gap between 15 and 20. That's what we're talking about in terms of the people. And then Austin made the point about the families. The huge thing about that from the programming standpoint is $69 million incentive that was passed by Congress to incentivize states to get into the program, which is a huge incentive for most states. But then the other part is, Austin, right now the federal government matches Mississippi's contribution at 77%. That's like the standard Medicaid matching rate. And that goes up into the 90s when you expand Medicaid.
You do full
so you leave that money on the table. We're talking about billions of dollars. Here's the other thing. We learned this week that Mississippi has already spent over $1 billion that has gone towards expansion in other states. And this is where the math starts to. We're part of a United States. We're part of a republic.
You want to clean up that a little bit?
Over the course of years.
You said Mississippi. What you're meaning is Mississippians' federal tax dollars that go to Washington. Yeah. Those tax dollars are used to do Medicaid expansion in California
and other states.
And Connecticut.
So we lose that benefit. So it's a benefit that's going out of state.
But I wanted to just clarify that.
But I mean, all of that to me, Austin, is like that's a huge part of the educational process of all this.
I shall remind you that the Republican Speaker of the House pass what you want.
We're big fans of the House plan over here.
And so, this is a very good debate that's happening. Yeah. It's going to go the whole session.
Right.
It's going to go to conference. It's probably going to go to conference or could come back later. Nothing's ever dead in that place because you can suspend the rules and bring it back up.
Well, it's funny to me you say that because it takes 2/3 to suspend the rules, and they would essentially need 2/3 in either chamber to really pass this anyway.
That's right. So this is a valid debate. That's happening. It should happen. When we first had this conversation, I said, you know what? We talk about that family of four. Think about the 27-year-old husband, the 26-year-old wife with 2 young kids. He's out making $2,500 a month. Okay, that's about $30,000 right there. $2,500 a month. She's not working because she just had a baby. She's trying to take care of the two little kids. We're not talking about people who were really wealthy. And my thing was, I'm worried about that guy who's driving a truck or is working for the Department of Transportation, whatever he's doing, and his gallbladder bust, or she gets really sick. I don't want to see them go into bankruptcy because they have no coverage whatsoever.
That's a great point. Well,
That's why I'm glad this conversation is happening with both a House and a Senate plan, and I'm glad we're having this debate so we can figure out how we help the theoretical family of four that I just described.
I want to touch on this point with Medicaid real quick before we move on, and that is, this week we've kind of seen a drumbeat of groups come out, in support for a more robust expansion. I would substantially more robust expansion than what the Senate plan allegedly offers. The medical association, faith leaders, the business community you've mentioned already. There are coalitions throughout the state from different sectors that are pushing for a robust expansion of Medicaid. It seems like there's a consensus, within the greater community for expansion. Where is the no coming from?
Well, I'm glad you asked that.
Let me answer that first.
Yeah.
Do you care?
No, go ahead.
You can have it.
The no is coming from the same thing that I just explained to Brandon. It are those folks who are just principally against the expansion of government and the fear of what an expansion program could do to our budget cost in Mississippi. That is where the no is coming from.
And what they have to know and what they have to hear is they are out of step with a majority of Mississippians, including, if they are Republicans, the majority of people in their own party.
Could be.
Because every polling number, I have not seen a single polling figure, including the one that came out this week by Cigna, who's a good polling firm, who says that 55% of Republican primary voters are in favor of expansion. So whoever these people are, and whatever learned economic theories they're operating on, they are out of sync with their own electorate.
You're getting emotional about this.
Well, they need to hear it. Those members of the Senate need to know that if that's what they're hanging their hat on, their voters are not with them on that.
But listen, so what? Don't we say? I'm not telling you that I'm defending. You ask who they are, and I'm telling you who they are.
Right. You're right. All I ask is
I'm not saying whether they're right or whether they're wrong. But wouldn't you say you want elected officials to not look at polling and do whatever their principles are?
Well, they don't have the argument, and now they're talking about arcane economic theory, which really doesn't work because Mississippi's portion of this wouldn't come due until 2034, and it's 10% of what you pay. So the notion that somehow this is economically ruinous is an insane conversation because there's no real economic theorist out there who doesn't recognize that Medicaid expansion has been a boon for the states who have expanded. There's nobody, hey, Austin, there ain't no state in America trying to unexpand. And 40 of them have done it. So who is talking this way?
I just was answering Michael's question.
But now let's talk about the folks who have been coming to the Capitol.
Real quick.
Hospitals, doctors, every hospital executive and every doctor and nurse worth their salt in the state of Mississippi needs to be hammering the Senate right now. And if they're not, they need to be asked why by their patients, because this is the easiest economic and healthcare policy that we could pass. It would have the most expansive effect. We know that we're going broke by paying for uncompensated care through our emergency rooms. So this is the time for hospitalists, for hospitals, doctors, and all the way down the line to do it. I'm glad we saw some of that this week, but we need more of it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them are like, hey, what's the plan? What am I supposed to be advocating for? I'd like to see the plan.
That's where that Senate kind of hemming and hawing hurts us.
Right. And I mean, and to be fair, we talked earlier when you took exception to some framing about words matter, and a lot from some of these communities, the language has been very, very, very specific and selective. It's things like close the coverage gap, and so you can see that these groups, they're not. They're not necessarily advocating for Medicaid expansion, like using those words, but there are these desires to ensure asking the legislature to make sure more Mississippians get health insurance coverage.
Yep.
And you didn't mention by name, but Care for Mississippi is the name of that coalition that's helped to sponsor some of those events. Yeah.
All right. So next thing real quick is PERS. We've talked a little bit about it. It continues to, take, I think, a front seat this legislative session as the future of the program remains in kind of jeopardy. PERS is the public employee retirement system. Some legislation still floating around to change the board. And then, of course, this 2% employer contribution increase. But I kind of want to ask it this way, because I think when it comes to the debate, I think this is an interesting piece, is that especially we talked a lot about the Senate. With Senate leadership, we've heard how important it is to make sure PERS is solvent, that the state upholds its end of this contract, of this agreement. Senate leadership has also bragged over the last 5 years about reducing the size of government and state employees, which essentially feed the PERS system. So, I mean, where's the congruency here?
There's not a lot. This is a bit of an odd issue to take. I will tell you, for our listeners at home, the way that I understand this is the House and Senate members get tired of having to deal with PERS each year. And so it's one of those recurring headaches that comes up, and you have the funding question, and so
was an issue when you were in the legislature.
Yes, and so those types of things tend to have like legislator-made crises. Mm-hmm. The truth of the matter is, I said $3 billion last week. I was wrong, as we learned in yesterday's hearing. Mm-hmm. It's $32 billion. Okay. $32 billion in holdings against about $100 million in debt. So this is a well-performing fund. And even as we heard yesterday, they got into the weeds about it. It's a well-performing fund as compared to other funds of its kind. And so PERS members can feel good that, hey, this is a good fund, it's performing well, and it can cover its liabilities. When we talk about liabilities in the PERS world, I think it's important to say this. That means the commitment that was made to people when they signed on. That's their retirement. So when we call it liability, what that means is if that's the promise we made to you to pay your retirement. So I've been watching this whole debate, and I'm kind of surprised, Austin, that we got members of the legislature willing to expend this much political capital over something that, if you were to compare PERS to other programs across the state, is actually doing pretty good, and it actually is in pretty good shape. The only thing I can conclude is that you want to change the makeup of the board because you want that board to tell you what you want to hear, so you don't have to face the retirees and adjust benefits. Because under Mississippi law, the only body who can adjust benefits is the legislature. Now, the House and Senate could adjust benefits right now if it wanted to. It doesn't have to listen to a board at all. But I think they want a board to come in to tell them what they want to hear so they can use that to adjust benefits. That's the only thing that makes any sense. Otherwise, I don't know what they're over there doing.
What makes sense to you?
Okay, what makes sense to me is I think that they want to put more expert. I would not be a good PERS board member. They want to put more experts in the field on that board. I think that when I talk to legislators, when I talk to other really smart people about this who, again, know a heck of a lot more about this situation than I do. I did watch every minute of that committee meeting that was yesterday. It was very good. Chris Johnson is the chairman of that Senate committee, deserves a lot of credit for putting that on. That 216 was packed yesterday. But I think what they're like is, hey, listen, we have, I think this sort of example was given yesterday. We have sort of one segment of people that are on this board who kind of there's nothing wrong with these folks. They work hard, they're good people, but they have one sort of thought process right here. Let's go add some people from this field who are from that investment world, who have this expertise to sort of help balance that conversation, who may not come back and tell the legislature exactly what they want to hear. So I do want to agree with something that Brandon just said. From what I understand, the PERS investment fund does do very well. Is sort of a 4-year average that looks really good on investment returns. But you talked about there's $32 or $33 billion in assets that fund holds. But they have to look at sort of the unfunded liability part, which is if everybody retired today, what do we owe? Well, that's a $55 it's in the mid to upper $50 billion number. That's what's got everybody sort of flustered. So listen, you got to do something. All right, you got to do something because baby boomers are retiring now. There's a lot more of them. They're going to be sort of in the system the next 15, 20 years.
And to the point earlier, state government has shrunk.
Yes, sir. There are less people that are paying in.
Right.
That's right. So you got to do one of two things. You either have to figure out well, first of all, say this, and Daniel Sparks said this, and it was a smart thing of him because he believes it. We must make sure retirees understand, or people in the system, day one or day a million, we are going to protect your retirement. It's going to be there. But you got to make sure you do something to ensure it. And what can you do? You got to get more money into the system, which means either employees or employers have to pay more, or you got to, change the what you're paying out. And there are some ideas about new employees. They essentially wouldn't get the cost of living adjustment. New employees, like people who get hired by the state or a city or
after a certain date.
After the legislation goes into place, not people in it. So that would be okay. That's less money that we're going to have to pay out at some point in time down the road, but it helps sort of the unfunded, the liability aspect.
Now, you hear that, all right, so is that going to make – the state pays pretty low compared to the Southern average and certainly low compared to the private sector. When you hear things like that, we already talk about the number of people paying into PERS is lower. When you hear something like that, Brandon, I mean, is this going to attract people to stay in Mississippi? We talk about the brain drain. If the retirement that is so robust that is kind of the drawing or keeps the balance between low pay but great benefits, if the benefits aren't as strong as they were, do people stay? Do people want to work for the state of Mississippi?
It's a huge incentive. We all know that. I mean, it's one of the big draws of doing this public service work, and it's You heard a lot of that said yesterday during the conversation. I think this is dangerous for members of that legislature. If you talk to them over there right now, there's not a single one of them that's not getting hammered.
Yeah,
because they got 350,000 people in this system across the state, about 10% of the population, and they're going to the grocery store and they're running into these folks. This is where not being clear with what your ultimate conclusion is a problem. They really don't have a competency or an expertise problem on that board. They have actuarial folks who are there for each meeting. They got a team of lawyers there. The people who are elected to serve on this board, there's an unbelievable number of them that are accountants. If you attend these board meetings or you overhear them, it ain't a competency problem. And it's not an expertise problem. And why on earth would you trust the Mississippi Senate to figure out who your experts are? Who are they going to send you, Bobby Axelrod? I mean, the notion that they're going to find the right expert, that's nonsense. I didn't even understand that. But why they don't just say what it is they want to do? If you want to lower the benefit, or if you want to do what you just said, and you want to take away the 13th check, then just do it. Have the political will to do it. Why you got to hide behind the board?
I'm not advocating for any. I'm just saying if there is a problem. Okay, if the PERS board or legislators are going, hey, we got a problem. It's not going to hit us this year. It's not going to hit us next year. But in 10 years or 8 years or 18 years, we have a big problem. You got to do something.
Well, we've seen how well this Senate is doing at solving the problems of the day. So now they're going to handle the 18-year and the future problem. I just think it's nonsense. And I think they're running the risk of getting hammered. Like let's take Daniel Sparks, for example. He's going to raise all these questions and then go back home and have to get hammered by, and they're probably not even going to pass something.
I don't know what they're going to do. I really don't know. I did leave out one other thing they could do. Is they could put
last point.
No, let me finish. Is that thank you. They could put large sum of money into the system, which would go into the pool and get investments, and they can make money on that. But if there is if and the PERS board is looking at them going, we've got a problem, we need you to do something. PERS board said we need to do a 5% raise of the employer match over 3 years. I'm not advocating for any of these things. I'm advocating for the debate and the conversation, which is what Chris Johnson was trying to do as the chair of the Senate committee.
All right. You talked about political will, and we've kind of hammered the Senate, but something
I have. I'm glad to.
It's all right. Going back to one of the first conversations we had on this show early in the session, was the ballot initiative. It appears dead, and it appears dead because of the Senate. So I mean, it really, since 2020, the Supreme Court struck it down in 2021, and it seems like now every legislative session it's same song, new verse. Is there? I mean, is this the end of the road? Will we ever get to the point where there's enough political appetite to offer a ballot initiative that's palatable to both the legislature and the electorate?
Well, I hope so, because I firmly believe it's a constitutional right of Mississippians that was taken away, and we either have that right or we don't. And I hope that it will. The House passed it overwhelming very early. It's clear it's got overwhelming support in the House. When the vote happened in the Senate last Thursday, it passed 26-21. There were several members who were not there who would be a yes vote on that. But the chairman of the committee made the decision that the support wasn't there. He did not feel like there was a support that was in the Senate to move it forward. And so that's why the bill died. Again, as we just talked about with Medicaid expansion, this issue could easily come back up this session. It ain't going away. It's going to come back next year. If it doesn't happen, it's going to come back the year after. There are people that think this is an important issue for Mississippians.
Yeah, I've been trying to have a raucous, lively conversation today. Y'all aren't matching my energy, so I'll go low energy on this. The Senate is a problem. If you're just observing the process this year, it would be fair to say, what are they up to? And this is another issue that's overwhelmingly popular, that people have asked for a solution on. And this whole kind of paternalistic thing where they say, we can't show you our plan because we're concerned about the votes for this plan that we can't show you. That's nonsensical. And so we keep running into these arguments with each of these major issues that are affecting our government and that people are look to their state legislature to do. And the Senate keeps saying, we know best, and this is not the year to do something. And we just keep doing that. It's very disappointing. And so if you have noticed today a little bit of frustration, a little bit of kind of taking the air out of the Senate, it's because we're saying this about every single issue. Now, I said at the beginning of this season, I said, y'all, they're taking on too much. The legislature can never do
right.
five big things. I've said that from the beginning.
As the House passed everything right. Within weeks.
Well, y'all remember me saying, Jason White, boy, he's got a lot on his plate. It's going to be hard to do all that. I didn't know we were going to go from 5 to 0. I didn't know that we were going to go to nothing.
Well, I don't think we're at nothing.
I mean, I don't know. Let me put it this way. All the stuff that's popular, all the stuff that the citizens of Mississippi really want to see done, that seems to be getting taken off the table.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, expansion is being debated right now. It's not dead. The ballot initiative is not in a good position. Education reform, the Senate did have their own plan. The House had a different plan.
But see, I call that conservative just stuff. I don't find it like I don't find it popular. I'm talking about these issues that people are like, hey, fix the ballot initiative, give us Medicaid expansion, put more money in public schools, those types of things. But Brandon, kind of
the put more money in public schools is where the House and the Senate are. They just have different ideas about how to do that. And the Senate, and Dennis Barber, who's the chairman of the Education Committee in the Senate, he's pretty transparent and upfront about, hey, this is what we want to do. House has a different idea. We'll see where that ends up.
At least at this point, the Senate has been more transparent with ed funding than they have with some of these other pieces of legislation.
Yeah, and we've covered that. And there's a lot moving around on that. And look, I hope it happens. I'm just my point would simply be that if you watch the process this week, these things appear to be coming to a pretty rough path there in the Senate.
All right. I think that will be it for this week. This has been At Issue on MPB Think Radio, weekly discussion about the 2024 Mississippi legislative session. If you can't catch us live each Friday at 6:30, At Issue can be streamed on demand on the MPB Public Media app, or you can subscribe to the At Issue podcast. Each week's podcast includes an extended version of our weekly interview, as well as an extended version of our Roundtable discussion. And if you'd like to see what we all look like, the full interview and Roundtable are available on YouTube. Just search Mississippi Public Broadcasting At Issue. I'm Michael Guidry from all of us at MPB. Thanks for listening.